Ask plenty of people interested in Star Citizen what its problems are, and most would say it's the stability, especially recently with new database tech coming online. In my most recent podcast episodes with YouTubers Ferrister and Yamix, we got to talking about what they saw as some of the struggles with the game. I'll leave those linked down below along with the rest of my weekly podcast, but for those who know Yamix, you may be surprised to hear him say the game could be great right now. So you feel like this, besides like stability and some story and like the core of the game, you do feel like it's something that could be released?
If Star Citizen refined its optimization, if it sorted out the features that are, still in progress of being made for the current existing stuff, right, and stopped any new additions, if they just refined it, yeah, it'd be a pretty good game. Let's say performance is really good, right?
Mm-hmm.
Star Citizen
like
would
normal.
look fantastic. Add even hell an 8-hour simple story chain, right? And you're done. You made a really good space sim.
This 10-year alpha is still known for performance issues, and instead of creating a smoother game for players to play right now, they continue adding new features and mechanics that can cause more problems. Today I'm going to show you why they do this, and why you should still be happy they do. And for a chance to win a 400i multi-person exploration ship, stick around until the end. Thank you for coming to my Tomato Talk. The first step to understanding the absolute jank that can sometimes be Star Citizen is realizing it's still early in development. Now, let's stop right there, because the term will likely send some folks careening out of their chairs. I'm not going to give you a detailed walkthrough of Star Citizen's history, I did that a couple years ago. The game has had some struggles in development. In 2015, it expanded in a major way, adding explorable and much more expansive planetary bodies, setting back development a few years as the tech was built out and implemented into the game as we've seen in the following years. And up until around 2017 and 3.0, I would say the project was lacking in obvious direction, coming off as a tech demo. Some may say it still does. Since then though, the focus has been solidifying the systems that could create and support an actual game for years to come. This includes the in-house UI system, planetary creation tools, the outpost and space station building systems like Rastar, the ship creation pipeline, a proper rendering engine, the audio engine, and more. These weren't new technologies to the industry, but they needed to be built in-house so they could scale, grow, and develop as the game and other projects in Star Citizen do, rather than depending on the engine from somebody like Epic. The two most important of these systems are persistent entity streaming and server meshing. These systems are absolute requirements for the way Star Citizen is meant to work. If you want to be able to find your friend's crashed ship 2 days after they landed, persistence is needed. And if we want a seamless environment across massive spaces with a reasonable server load on any planet or location, server meshing is meant to help. Despite this ground-level importance of these tools and the multitude of devs that have been working on them, they have taken years to implement, with PES only just being added in 3.18 and server meshing still out of reach. So if the foundation of the game relies on these pieces of tech, it only makes sense to say the development process is still early, just not necessarily that it just started. With that being said though, if all of those developers and engineers are working at building out these complex systems, that only leaves them less time to solve tech debt and figure out the more challenging bugs. With more emphasis on defining the fundamentals behind actually running the game, these devs and the devs working on things like modular mission systems and resource management gameplay may not have the time to continuously deal with glitched mission givers or torque imbalanced glitches. And this really sucks. But let's look at the alternative. NPCs have stood on chairs in Star Citizen since at least 2019, and the problem has been solved at least 3 distinct times. However, it just keeps coming back for entirely different reasons. Thankfully, NPCs on chairs is not a problem that will ruin your day, but this is just an example. As the game is built, it's undergoing more ground-level changes than most early access games, so things will tend to break. And when they get fixed, sometimes so much code is constantly changing, they just break again. NPCs standing on chairs might be fixed based on the way that levels load in, but they could break 8 months later based on a change due to AI logic. This is one of the major problems of the game, and why most people should not be playing the game at this time. Major game loops like refining, engineering, and crafting don't exist. The dynamic economy is not dynamic, and there's not even a player trading system yet. The focus with the current state of the game is to continue building these major missing aspects. And a balance of keeping the game playable enough to test and understand versus adding some of these major new features to continue towards the goal is not an easy one to shoulder. It's best laid out, in my opinion, by Jace, a former community manager for another game I love, Satisfactory.
Not only that, but maintaining a high level of stability during active development is also incredibly inefficient, okay? This is because it would mean consistently undoing and redoing work that we've done before in order to stabilize the game when the game's design is constantly changing and new features are being added. Not only that, but adding new features risks instability anyway as it is, whether or not we're redoing and undoing work. So, and long term, this makes no sense because it would mean that it would take us like, I don't know, twice as long to finish the game when we could just do it in half the amount of the time if we were to accept some level of growing pains. We've been working on Satisfactory for like 6 or 7 years now, and if we were chasing all these bugs to clean them all up at every possible step of the way, we wouldn't be nearly as far in development as we are now. Financially, this is awful, and then maybe even interest-wise, you guys wouldn't be getting any new stuff and it would get very boring.
It sounds pretty familiar. The fact is, when the game is being built, most of the effort is going to go towards, building. In the alpha phase, features need to be proven out, tested, and made to integrate with the rest of the game. While I would also appreciate more focus on making sure that what we have now gets the job done, the amount of effort it could take away from upcoming bounty hunting missions, the next cargo refactor, the new star map, underground facilities, or building interiors might not seem worth it. And many of these new features being worked on will end up replacing the old buggy systems anyways, and getting rid of existing problems. So then what's the point? The new star map shines as an obvious example here, knowing how bad the star map is currently. All of this isn't even to mention the priority of bug fixing will likely be on Squadron 42, which is due to release much sooner and be much less expansive. Those fixes may hopefully make their way to Star Citizen, but as with many things, the majority of the effort will go to Squadron first. So when looking at stability in Star Citizen, there are definitely some reasons to point to it seemingly not being a priority. With everything changing so often, the effort being put into bug fixing at this stage of development could pop right back up, wasting time or money, and could be fixed by an upcoming and inevitable change to the game. If those changes are something bigger, like the changes that caused the terrible 9 months that were 3.0 to 3.3, or the incredibly unstable implementation of PES in 3.18, then it's just an inevitable pain point that they have to push through. And a pretty good time for players to take a break. Maybe taking advantage of upcoming Arena Commander fixes. And finally, there's just a lot to do. Maybe glitches won't pop back up, but with every patch release, the attention jumps to the next 2 updates. Because at the end of the day, the most important concern for the company is to fund and release Squadron 42 and develop Star Citizen. The absolute best ways to do that, tried and true, is to continue adding features to the game that people want. More features means more options for more people, means more attention, means more excitement for new features, and eventually, ship sales. While funding has largely increased as the game became more stable and playable since 2020, I do believe there is also a direct correlation with new features and gameplay options keeping the game interesting and attracting more eyes. That being said, if you look at the progress tracker or read the monthly reports, you will see a ton of bug fixing always ongoing. But this cycle of pain that leads to you bright space people suffering through the occasional glitchy mess is not forever. While we are still in the alpha stage, Star Citizen's clearly operating as an experience that they hope people will play as a game, so they definitely have blame to take in the expectations that they set there. And they do have a responsibility to continue striving to meet them. Here are a few ways I think the Star Citizen experience will improve in the near future, despite these complications. Before we start, everybody should expect there to be no major push to end all bugs for a good amount of time, at least until beta. But currently there are some ways in which the game is raising its stability in leaps and bounds. One thing I think many players have noticed over the last couple of years have been the quality of life improvements. This might sound like basic things like adding move all and shift click functionality to the inventory system, but there's more. boosting servers to 100 players, updating crime stats to avoid prison sentences, at least trying to account for 30k losses at various times, in-game stopwatches, an actual tutorial for new players, and major changes to the game renderer and therefore frame rate improvements are all additions of various sizes that we generally wouldn't have seen before last year. While this isn't solving our elevator, train, space station, and ship-related bugs of all sorts, there seems to be an emphasis on getting things more to a game-ready state over the last year for whatever that's worth. And I only see this trend increasing, as every update in that same time has added more and more unmentioned changes with big impacts to players. Things like crafting in the Vulture and Reclaimer, control hints for new players, server size increases, and even simple things like unrestricted ship spawning access will continue to improve the game in a space between those big features and the smaller bug fixes. And with PES in-game allowing more devs to focus on the real work they've been waiting for, it looks more and more likely that these unmentioned additions will continue to increase. But this still doesn't save them from the bigger bugs. Duplicating elevators, unsewed players, login problems, running into invisible objects and dying. These problems get fixed occasionally, but they continue to plague the player base and have a much greater impact than the simple inventory problems. They are session-ending issues, and sometimes stop players from even playing the game. In addition to this, we sometimes see some rather debilitating changes to the game itself that would make more sense if the game was more complete. Recent ship claim timers come to mind. So while the company does seem to be taking time to eliminate issues and improve quality of life, those fixes may only last a patch, and major bugs do still persist, causing plenty of issues. And that's where the other current fixes come in. The big systems, the tools, the replacements. An example I used earlier was the new star map. Rather than fixing the controls, graphics, and interactivity of the old star map, why not just wait for a new one to revamp the experience since it's going to be done anyways? Why optimize shadows and lighting 2 years ago if the Gen 12 renderer would have those changes and more packed in when added in 3.18? Arena Commander could have seen many fixes over the years, but instead has received one major update in 3.20 which solved a lot of them all at once. The team could be polishing up bunker missions that we have problems with, but new AI logic, modular mission systems, and underground facilities will all replace them within a year. There are plenty of iterations of systems and tools that cannot be made until the supporting features were in place, and a lot of times they eliminate old annoying bugs and quirks, even while introducing new ones. We may have gotten rid of the terrible use button back in the day, but the new 2018 interaction system came with plenty of its own problems, many of which I'm sure they hope to solve with the upcoming implementation geared towards Squadron 42's release.
Their physics are kind of wonky. They fly out into space. Like there are issues around the vehicles. And there are so many posts here that I can see. I'm looking at them right now. 3 years ago, 2 years ago, right? A year ago, 3 years ago. Like there's so many. But like the vehicle thing, this will be addressed at some point. So why are we going to spend time fixing something with the vehicles now? Potentially risk introducing new bugs in the process, only to undo it all when we intend to rework the vehicles in the future anyway.
The obvious problems that arise here are how many iterations does it take? How many times will the flight model need to be tuned for enjoyment? How long is the wait for these new features? Should there have been a bunch of small changes rather than one big one? Would we have been better off getting star map changes in 2020 rather than waiting another 3 years for the full thing to be replaced? This is a large part of the conversation surrounding Star Citizen and actually was a major topic on that podcast with Yemix. Iteration and the amount that's needed is a constantly debated topic in Star Citizen. There's no right answer in my opinion. While I'm no game developer, I can understand that there are likely different ways of working based on the situation at hand. It may not be possible for us to know if the strategy that CIG took was the best for this game, but it has become abundantly clear that the balance between development and bug fixing in a live game in development is incredibly important to get right, and can make or break the success of a game. This is a large conversation. I just wanted to make a short video to try and explain it to some extent. It's not just a Star Citizen issue, it's a live development issue, and we see that more and more as these games come out in various states, and it won't be going away anytime soon, I think. So if you aren't interested in a game that isn't focusing on polishing and the player experience first, stay away from Star Citizen for now, because that is not their main priority. If you'd like to continue following along with and learning more about it though, I've got you covered. I release new videos every week, streams almost every day, and various podcast, reaction videos, and news on my second channel, Space Tomato 2. So if you're looking to dive into this, I'm happy to help. And if you'd like to win a 400i exploration ship in the game, along with a copy of Star Citizen, we just started our June giveaway. Every month offers a new chance to win something nice around here. All you have to do is enter in the link below. And you can also find the secret code I left somewhere in this video to turn in for additional entries. Whatever you decide to do, thank you for watching this video. I hope you learned something new, and I'll catch you in the next.